What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the shop, and today's video is going to be a once over on my new to me Arctic Cat Wildcat. So what I want to do is I want to change all the fluids, because that's what I like to do when I get something that's been used before. It's got a couple of miles on it. I don't know the history on it, so we're going to get rid of all of that, and then while it's on the lift, maybe we'll do a couple other things, like maybe checking some brakes, probably checking the belt to make sure it's in good condition. So stick around, should be a lot of fun. I guess it doesn't really matter where we start, so I'm going to start from the front, make my way towards the back, and in order to change or replace the front differential oil, it's going to be much easier for us to just remove this small skid plate here. So there's 6 screws holding that in, and they're Torx. So I'm going to actually be, it's funny because I'm using my Stihl wrench to remove these out because they happen to be the same size. So I'm going to pull this skid plate out and we'll get to the bolts. Alright, that should slide right out just like that. And it'll give us an opportunity to get rid of some of this stuff here at the same time. A little bit of housekeeping, you know. Pressure washer can't get to all of this. He swore he didn't beat on this thing, but every time I look, there's always more dirt. Let's get back to the oil change. So I got my, again, this is another old pot that my wife doesn't use anymore. The handle broke on it. If you guys saw the last video, I was using some muffin pans, muffin tin to do a bit of a repair too. Just, you know, just go in your wife's kitchen and do what you gotta do and get your job done, you know, just make sure she doesn't know. So let's crack this drain plug. It's an 8 mil. And I haven't cracked anything else yet, and you'll see why, because I want to just let it go out nice and slow and see if there's any water. Otherwise it'll, nope, no water. Did I get it in? So close. So close. I always make a mess every time. And on the Arctic Cats, there's a little bit of a magnet on the tip of these bolts. And I like to inspect it to see what we have. And this is just a little bit of sludge. You know, that's kind of normal. But if you look at this and you see a chip, and you can read a part number off of it, it's not a good thing. So in order for this to drain a little bit quicker, I'm going to remove the bolt that is for the oil level, because on the front diffs of these Arctic Cats, and this is not just the Wildcat in particular, most ATV Arctic Cats as well as their side-by-sides have another small plug that you would remove, and it sits a little bit lower than the fill plug, and that's when you that's where you want to fill it up to. If you go all the way up to the fill plug, you've put too much in it. Alright, so moving to the back, we've got the engine over here. That's the next one in line. This is your drain plug. So what I'm going to do, and as you can tell, it doesn't necessarily want to drip past the frame without making a mess. So I'm going to try and do this here. I've done it in the past and it tends to work well. I just cut another container from a previous oil change, and I'm going to hopefully place it something like this. And once I crack that open, it should, come on, maybe this won't work. Maybe this won't work at all. If it stays, it'll be alright. But it should hopefully flow over this plastic into my drain pan down below without making much of a mess. And again, I'm not very good at this. I always make messes. Oh, that wasn't very tight. That concerns me a little bit. Oh yeah, golden. The only thing is I might have to hold it though. So that's flowing almost perfectly centered into my drain pan, and The one time I can't show you guys because my hands are full. You got to take my word for it, guys. It's like, it's a beautiful thing for me. And just like the front diff, the drain plug on the engine also has a small magnet on here. I wiped it clean, really nothing much to see here. So we're going to get it started here. And my little trick has worked just well. Really nifty. Haven't made too much of a mess yet. But I still have the transaxle to clean out. So hopefully it stays this way. And finally at the back, we've got our transaxle fluid, which is a Allen. This is an 8 mil. See if we can crack this free. There we go. Not too bad. Again, hope that we get all of the fluid in the container, not on the ground. Not on the ground. Okay, we're good. We're good. This stuff is a little bit thinner than I expected. So there is a proper transaxle fluid that is now being provided, but apparently, if you guys are wondering and you have one of these, don't quote me on this, but apparently you can run 040 synthetic oil, engine oil that is. But really, why not just run the proper fluid? I know it's expensive. I mean, I think I paid like $28 for 1.2 liters. I mean, I'm not sure what it's made of, but to be that pricey, it's almost like it's got, you know, a little bit of unicorn tears in there or something like that. Here now, check this out. This is another magnetic plug. This one's a little bit concerning. There is quite a bit of a buildup. You can see there's a lot in there. Nothing sharp or anything like that. It just seems to be like fuzz at this point. But there's a lot. So I'm happy I'm doing the oil change. But I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this. Because I mean, look at this. This is quite pasty. So we're gonna keep an eye on this and make sure that it doesn't continue to do this. Otherwise, we might have an issue in there. So there's a little bit of back and forth here, guys, but we're back to the front. Everything is done emptying itself out, and what I've noticed here is that they've actually put the fill plug quite close, and you need a short wrench to be able to crack it loose. I got the drain plug back in place, which is really good. And then the easiest way to fill any of these front differentials or places that are hard to do, I got a trick for that. Let me show you. So I might have showed you this before in previous videos, but if you're new to the channel, this is what I like to do. So I have a little pump that is basically the same thing you would use for marine use in your outboard engine, or your foot, I should say. And what you're going to do is just put the hose in there, and I'm going to try and, I'll have to hold it, apparently, because it will fall out. And then I'll pump the fluid rather than trying to use a funnel or a line with the little nozzle on the end of this and make a mess. So it does take a little bit more time, but it works well. Now that the front diff is all filled up, we're going to move our way to the back, because that's what we're going to need to do on the lift. And we're going to fill, sorry guys, again, camera angles. We're going to fill it with the proper transaxle fluid, which, yeah, again, we talked about it. It's a little bit expensive, more than I'd like to spend, but I want to make sure I got the right stuff in there. And you'll know this one is full when it starts to come out of the bottom. So once that's done, we'll put the plug in and move on to the engine. And now to fill the engine oil. And you'd probably think it's a little bit weird that I'm sitting in the cab waiting to fill the engine oil, but it is a little weird because this is where the oil filter and also the dipstick is located. So I'm going to grab the camera and see if I can show you exactly what I'm looking at. So right between the two seats, we've got our oil filter, and right there is our dipstick. So we're going to fill that up. It takes about 2.5 liters approximately to fill it up from a full drain. And we're going to put a new filter, obviously. I like to put the hours on the filter so that I know approximately how long I've been using it. I don't really track mileage as much on off-road vehicles. I like to use hours, and you can easily find that on the console here. If you flick through, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. This is voltage, air intake, all sorts of good information. Not that one, sorry. The center one will have our hours. There it is. We got 165.4 hours. So that's what we're going to put down on the filter. And it is quite the angle to get that funnel in there, so I'm going to have to really take my time. You can actually see down here in the hole that it's not fully in, so I'm going to probably end up making a mess, but let's take our time and see what happens. Easy does it. Easy does it. They're going in. Oh yeah, we'll be alright. Gonna take a little bit of time. But once she's all full, we'll fire it up and see what it sounds like. Engine oil is all topped up. The front diff is finished and all topped up. The rear transaxle is all drained and full. I think it's ready to turn the key, guys. I mean, I know I haven't started this on the channel yet, so if you guys never heard one of these, well, let's find out what it sounds like. I know, right? It's kind of underwhelming. It's a little bit on the quiet side, which I don't mind, because if you're going nice and slow, you can do exactly this. You can talk, but I kind of expected a little bit more oomph to it. Not that it sounds bad, because as soon as you give it a little bit pedal, that sounds pretty good right there. So that, I think, is what it's all about, but it revs actually pretty quickly. Of course, this does have the closed loop EFI system, and if you guys don't know exactly what that means, right now, because the engine's cold, it's running on a map, which is why it gives you a little bit of a hesitation when you do that. But once the engine's nice and warm and it starts using all the parameters, talking about like the throttle position sensor, the O2 sensor, air intake temperature, a couple other things that are in play, it becomes super rapid, almost like a two-stroke. So it's actually pretty cool. But we can't go for a ride just yet, because we have a little bit more work to do, and we need to get to it before we take that initial ride. So before we go for a ride, like I was saying, there's a few more things I want to do. Nothing too drastic at this point, but I want to do a really good overall look at the machine, because I don't know the history on it. So I'm going to be looking for just main stuff, like I'm going to probably take these wheels off real quick, maybe off camera, but just take a look at the brake condition, see how many more months or years I have of brake life. And then I'm going to take a look at, let's say, the wheel bearings. I'm going to give everything a bit of a shake, look at my tie rods, feel, okay. Well, that's kind of a typical Wildcat thing. Let me just zoom in on that for you. So the noise you hear is actually coming from the lower A-arm on the inside. Everything else on this side is nice and tight though. Bushings, the CV joints look to be nice. The boots are all intact. Tie rod, ball joints. So I'm going to probably give these ball joints a bit of a grease. I have, and a lot of people will probably, fight back in the comment section about this, but I have a small insertion needle, and I just kind of poke these. I just give it, a pump or so until these get full here, and I'm also going to do the, right down below there, I'm going to do the steering tie rod on both sides. I know it's, people are going to be saying in the comments, well, you're poking a hole in the boot and, dirt and stuff can get in. Yeah, maybe, but the needle is so small and the hole kind of seals itself. And I'd rather have this boot full of grease, and that way there, it prevents any kind of rust buildup. And if you if you do it once, you're usually good for life, because again, just like the bearings that I've shown you guys on the Big Bear, for example, it doesn't come with much grease to begin with. Something else I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove the air filter and give it a good cleaning. There's a couple of quick release pins here, and the cover just comes right off. Then we got our vacuum cleaner style looking filter. And that should just come right out here. And I'm just going to give this a nice wash, you know, a little bit of soapy water. I'm going to re-oil it to make sure that it's in good condition. I'm going to wipe the inside of the box. It looks actually pretty good. If I shine my light in here so that you guys can also see, you know, there's a little bit of debris in the bottom. That's to be expected, but nothing odd on the inside or in the throat of the carburetor, or throttle body in this case. So that's really good news. And the next thing I want to do is check these rear wheels, make sure that all of these components are okay, and yeah, maybe move on to the belt. Okay guys, I think we found the problem. I was checking the back here. Everything seems pretty tight when it comes to the pivot points here, like the suspension arms, upper and lower, even the tie rods, or sorry, not tie rods, the CV joints, all the boots and all the axles and stuff like that. But look at this. This wheel bearing is completely pooch. Actually, if you listen closely, and this is what I mean, when I went for a quick little ride, I thought that because I had forgotten this here, that I kept hearing a banging in the back, and I thought it was the box, because the box isn't secured. I went over that before. But if you listen closely and you look, the rim is actually contacting the spring because it is so close, even looking on that side. So watch this. Other than my lift making noise, wonder if I can, when I do that, you can hear the spring just kind of echo. So we're going to put one of those on order, and we're also going to put some of those bushings up front. While those parts make their way to me, there's still more stuff that I can be doing before I go for its initial ride. And it sounds like to me it's going to be a little bit longer than I was expecting, but that's just because I'm me, and I like to make sure that everything is kind of perfect before I go for a ride, especially if it's an off-road vehicle, because that way there I don't get stuck in the trail. I mean, there's no guarantees, but at least I've done everything I can to prevent it. So what I'm holding here is dielectric grease, and if you followed the channel before, you know that I'm going to go through every single one of these connectors that I can find, and I'm going to give every connector a chance to survive in the elements by giving it a little bit of dielectric grease. So I'm going to go around, look for everything I can find, do exactly that, and then yeah, we'll move on to the next thing. Upon further inspection, I removed the wheel on the driver's side on the back, and I thought it was a wheel bearing, and it turns out the wheel bearing is actually nice and tight. That's not what it is at all. There's more play up here and right down below when it comes to these bushings, and that's what's causing everything to get real close. And actually I think it might have been contacting the spring, but there's really no evidence that it was. So maybe it was just when I was doing like the banging, it was just kind of resonating through the spring, because there's no physical evidence that it was. It gets real close, but it doesn't. So before we move on, the last thing I want to do today, I just want to remove the cover for the clutch and just take a look inside, see what the condition of the clutches are, see what the belt's like. So let's get this clutch cover removed. Okay, and this cover should just come right off. So that means that that seal's doing its job, but as you can see, we've had a little bit of dirt come into this, and that's because the intake for the dirt and air, which could be the dirt or water that comes in, is right here. And then the exhaust for it is right here, which is not very high. So I'm not sure why they would have done that, but again, this isn't designed to go in the swamps, but it looks like it might have at one point. So yeah, so we're just going to look at this belt and see if I find anything obvious. But one thing you guys should note is when you do remove these clutches, or the secondary, you don't have to remove this one here to get the belt off. You just remove the secondary, and you want to make sure that you mark the two halves together so that when you put it back together, everything goes well. So I'm just going to remove these clutches. I'm going to give it a nice cleaning, blow out any dirt or any of that, let's say on the primary, secondary. Make sure it's all nice and clean, and then maybe next time we'll be able to go for a ride. But until then, I think this is where we're going to stop today. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I mean, we did a lot of work already. We've done all 3 oil changes. I mean, we did the front diff, transaxle, we did the engine oil with the filter as well. We dielectric greased all the connections I could find. There's a few other things like the belt that we've looked at. We did a quick check over on the suspension components. We got a bunch of bushings to replace there. They're not terrible at this point, but they are going to need attention sooner rather than later. I'm going to take the clutches apart, and I'm going to give it a good cleaning. I'm not going to film it just yet because I don't feel super familiar with these. It's been a while, and I like to post only stuff that I know. So that's what we're going to do next. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, you're doing a lot of work to a machine that you just purchased. It must be a real piece of garbage. Actually, it's not. It's in really good condition. Any one of you guys would probably just be able to jump in it, turn the key, and really enjoy it. But my OCD prevents me from doing that. So I want to go through this thing, fine-tooth comb, find anything and everything that may be wrong with it, make the necessary adjustments, make it mine. Stuff like, you know, putting that LED light bar on the top that I talked about in the previous video. I found another light in my drawer that is a little bit more flat for the front square light. I'm going to put that one instead because I feel like it's going to look nicer and provide a little bit more airflow for the radiator. And I also want to put the heater core back in place and deal with that. So maybe all of that is going to come in the next video. But anyways, I do promise we will take this thing for a ride. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But until next time, take care. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video. Guys, before you go, remember all the dirt that was in here? Well, I started cleaning it after I removed the clutches, or the rear secondary clutch, and check it out. The drain plug is missing. You still think I'm OCD now? I guess it's paying off.